author opinion of Dennis Kin at the history, geography and architecture, culture and life manners of Kazakhs in the program Discovering Kazakhstan.
Salam, привет, and hello. I'm Dennis Kin, and today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we will be discovering the Ili Alatau National Park and the quaint villages that surround it. This idyllic corner of the country not far from the city of Almaty and the border with Kyrgyzstan boasts mountain lakes, rushing rivers, and fertile farmland. Here, you can escape into nature with nary a tourist in sight or explore local towns where Kazakh traditions are being kept alive. Come along with us as we discover this heaven-touched land at the foot of the Alatau Mountains. After a 1-hour drive from the former capital of Almaty, skirting the foothills of the snow-capped mountains of the Alatau, we have arrived at one of the most beautiful corners of the Ili Alatau National Park, the Issik Gorge. On a beautiful sunny day like today, there is no better way to explore the Issik Gorge than in the classic soft-top Soviet Jeep called a Wazik. That name, Waz, comes from the letters UAZ, which stands for Uralsk Avtozavod, or the Uralsk Car Factory. This factory in Russia became famous for producing these hardy machines, which are the go-to off-road vehicle in former Soviet countries. Like a lot of Soviet automobiles, they're pretty bare-boned, but with the top down and the mountain breeze in your hair, you couldn't really ask for anything more. Our driver and guide was Alexander, a forester who works in the Ili Alatau National Park and the Almaty Reserve. Alexander has worked in the Alatau for decades and knows every last stone and tree. Alexander has taken me to his forester's cabin, his kind of home base here in the national park, and I couldn't think of a more charming little home than this one. He and his co-workers have covered it in these cute little paintings of the local wildlife, from the wild hogs to the deer to even the bears that live up in the peaks of the mountains. All around here, we have beautiful wildflowers, even some that have been planted in these kind of antique vases, which tell us just how old this place is, because looking at this, I can date it back to the early 1950s, even back to the Stalinist era of the Soviet Union. The forester's station may be old, but Alexander and his co-workers have long made it their own. The murals outside were just the start. Inside the cozy cottage was a whole other world to explore, and Alexander insisted on showing me himself. Alexander's cabin was a mini museum of his own making, full of adorable DIY exhibits and fascinating finds that he had collected during the course of his work. In the branches of this indoor forest, you could find wasp nests, astounding feats of architecture that you normally wouldn't dare to approach. Like a cabinet of curiosities, the place was full of forest artifacts, like the kind of puffball mushroom called a dojdevik, a huge sphere of fungus. Even the walls were decorated with the antlers of Kazakhstan's most famous deer, the Maral, who shed these velvety appendages in these mountains every February. Look at this scary guy. Is this a wolf?
That's right, a wolf. I was invited to go wolf hunting. The thing is that wolves went a little wild in here. They ate sheep and killed a lot of local cattle. So some hunters I know invited me to join them, and I was lucky to get this trophy. They stuffed it and then presented me with this wolf carpet. So this is a well-deserved trophy.
Awesome.
It could have been my first shot at a 300-meter distance.
Wow, yeah, that's a serious feat.
So my friends decided to make this kind of souvenir for me to remember that time I went hunting.
Well, of course, it's a bit scary, but these are definitely some dangerous animals.
They're very clever animals, you know. In fairy tales, they're often portrayed as silly ones, but in fact, wolves are very intelligent. That is why hunters say that wolves were naturally gifted with intelligence. The kind of intelligence we are born with, not artificial intelligence that makes us think.
But as clever as he was, he didn't look out, and now he's living here in the bedroom of the forester of the Issik Preserve, keeping them warm in the long winters. Up here in the mountains, living with nature, Alexander seemed to live a charmed existence. Even routine things like having lunch could be transformed into an invigorating experience because of the pure beauty of the surroundings. Down below the cabin was a rushing river, where a small picnic table was set up for an afternoon tea. Alexander has prepared this beautiful tea for us from mountain herbs that he's collected himself, and the smell there is just amazing. Do you get lonely being here all by yourself?
Actually, I never feel lonely here. Usually, I keep myself busy with different activities because I have to monitor the area, watch everything around, and accompany the tourists. In the evening, I sometimes like to write a couple of lines that eventually make up a whole new story, so I never get bored.
Actually, I think it sounds like I have a very similar job. Having some guests like you over to Kazakhstan, we get to show you around, share everything that is beautiful in this place. Alexander really is blessed in that regard, and he is really talented with making tea. What kind of herbs did you use?
We have about 2,000 different kinds of herbs, but for this tea I gathered some raspberry, oregano, wort, and a little mint.
Wow. Well, it tastes just like the mountains. Spasibo. Alexander says that this honey is also local. Some of his friends make it here in the mountains and bring it by pretty regularly. You just mix it in with your tea there and it melts right into it, and I imagine this is going to taste fantastic. Those mountain herbs, the sweetness of the honey, everything together. Oh, amazing. We drove up higher into the Alatau Mountains, a range that is famous among botanists for being the original homeland of a familiar fruit, the humble apple. Growing in the foothills here are wild apple trees called Malus sieversiae, or just sievers, and they are considered to be the progenitor of all cultivated apples in the world today. So these are the famous sievers apples.
Yeah, this is the famous Sievers apple tree, the progenitor of all cultivated apples in the world.
There are apple scientists who come from all over the world looking for this guy right here. As he said, all apples in the world can trace their roots back to this little guy. Can I try?
Well, it is a little green now. They might be sour, but I think you can try. It should taste bitter and sour now, just so you know.
It's super sour, but I mean, ooh. But it tastes like an apple, looks like an apple. But imagine that just from this little guy, these little wild apples, you can get apples as big as the famous Almaty Aport, which can be this big.
Back in these days, Almaty Aport was bred from these Sievers apple trees. Unfortunately, the secret of doing this had been lost, and it is impossible to breed Aports with its original flavor. I heard they even have a project aimed at breeding authentic Almaty Aport, but they have had no luck so far.
So it became an entire science to develop these very advanced varieties of apples, but it all started from this, which came from Mother Nature herself. Well, after climbing up mountain roads, we've now reached 1,750 meters above sea level to the gem of the Alatau Mountains, Lake Issik. And what a sight it is. Alexander, I heard that before this lake was even bigger. Now it's a beautiful, impressive lake, but before it was a little different?
So that you understand, at the moment we have about 2 million cubic liters of water in the lake. The original lake had about 20 million cubic liters of water. It used to look much more magnificent, beautiful, and deep. There was 10 times more water here in the old days.
So this here is the dam?
Yes, we are actually standing on it right now.
So we're standing right now on the dam that's holding back this water, but there was a tragedy in 1963 when one of these dams gave way during a massive mudslide in the mountains here, and this entire lake disappeared down into the gorge. It's unusual to even imagine that a lake could almost disappear, but Lake Issik was a precarious creation. On July 7th, 1963, a large mudslide struck the river valley and broke through the natural dam that was holding back the lake, tragically killing hundreds of tourists. The lake was only restored in the 1980s with a series of measures to reinforce a new dam.
Here is the lake. We are coming to its shore now.
And that water is ice cold. It is really something to sit here next to the lake, see the ripples of the breeze along the surface, and wonder just how this thing got here. We were standing before on top of the man-made dam that was created in the 1980s, but this lake is actually thousands of years old, and it has quite the story.
According to some sources, it appeared about 2,000 years ago. Others say it happened about 8,000 years ago. Once again, it is another mystery of this lake. Nobody knows for sure how it was formed. Most people, however, tend to think that it was formed 8,000 years ago as a result of a destructive natural disaster, most likely an earthquake. So we are standing in the center of an earthquake that eventually led to the formation of a natural dam as a result of mountains being ruined from both sides. This formed a 900-meter-long dam with a width of 600 meters and a height of 300 meters. Within a certain period of time, this water, the river that had been blocked, filled the reservoir, thus turning it into a lake. Its first name was Jasil Kol, Kazakh for Green Lake, which then became the Issik Lake.
It is a shame what a catastrophe happened here during those years, but I do have to say it remains a lake of astounding beauty and one that hides its own share of mysteries and secrets. Здравствуйте. Hello. Okay. Oh.
Его так надо.
There we go. When most visitors come to the Almaty area, they get to see a mountain lake called the Big Almaty Lake, which is a little bit closer to the city, and it really is a spectacular sight. But it's a shame that more people don't get out here to Lake Issik, because here not only can you come up to the shore and dip your toes in very carefully, as swimming is not allowed here, but we can come out onto the surface of the lake itself with a boat for hire. Now, there's no other way to experience a mountain lake like this than to get out in the very middle of it. And what a view we have. One thing you notice when you look at the lake is that it has this otherworldly color, this kind of gray turquoiseness to it, which is something you see often in mountain lakes, and I often wondered what was up with that. Well, it turns out that this is all due to a phenomenon called rock flower. So imagine up here high in the mountains, there are glaciers that over the eons have pushed over the soil, grinding the rocks into this very, very fine powder. That powder they call rock flour. It gets into the lake here and disperses and suspends in the water itself, and reflecting the rays gives it this unique shade, unlike anything else you'll see in the world. It is a special color, the turquoise of Lake Issik. Let's go. After 10 minutes of riding bumpy roads above Issik Lake, we have arrived at a border. We have this big black metal gate separating two territories. Out on this side, we have the Ili Alatau National Park, and behind here, a protected zone, the Almaty State Nature Preserve. Here we can see this poster with the snow leopard, one of the most famous of all animals in Kazakhstan, but an animal that is very, very endangered. So here, there is no hunting, no harassing these animals. They live up there in peace. But we, today, get special access to this territory.
Let's give it a try. We'll go to the area where our snow leopards live.
Not many people get to go through these gates. Let's go have a look. So we have seen the Issik Gorge, we've been to Issik Lake, and now finally we get to see the namesake river itself, the Issik River. And you couldn't ask for a better boundary between the national park and this protected land. People are not going to be able to make it over this river, over into this special preserve of the mighty snow leopard. Sasha has taken me to this crazy dam here that looks like it was built out of some kind of children's play set. This is here, apparently, to protect this whole valley from another catastrophic mud flow. And it's pretty wild to be walking on this bridge here made just out of rebar. Right below our feet is the very river Issik.
It is unique indeed. There are only a few similar dams in the whole world because it stands in the way of mountain torrents and is collected from separate sections. So if a catastrophe like the one of 1963 is going to happen again, all the large details of this construction, such as stones, rocks, logs, and trees will be supported in these sections.
Бревна, елки, деревья, они будут задерживаться вот в этих секциях. И если одна секция забьется,
If one of them gives way, the capacity of another one will be activated on the way out. It will enable all large objects to be caught in this mud flow trap, and all the small things such as sand and clay will flow down the river and win some time for people to notice what is happening and to take measures for preventing a disaster.
Она сделает и даст время, чтобы предпринять меры по спасению, эвакуации или дальнейших действий.
If that crazy dam was not enough of a sight for you, but by the time you get to the end, you're faced with this massive cliff face that is famous with both rock climbers and mountain goats, as we may see. They call it the Kremlin Wall. Why do they call it the Kremlin Wall?
Несколько версий.
There are several explanations of that. The first one is the color of the wall. If you've been to Moscow, you can tell that it looks similar.
И вторая версия, то есть Кремлевская стена, она...
The second version lies in the idea that in the Soviet times, the Kremlin Wall was a symbol of the power. The state was as mighty as the Kremlin Wall. So this rock is the same.
Крепость государства.
So we were talking a little bit about this wall, and it is quite popular with rock climbers, but you also see, if you stay here for long enough, the local mountain goat population. These guys are fearless, and if we stay here and use our binoculars, we might just be able to spy some of these rare animals in the wild. They say that they can climb up this entire rock face in close to a minute. Now that is courage. It is a beautiful sight. I don't know how many times I've seen mountain goats in silhouettes on mountains used in Kazakh art as a kind of shorthand for the beauty of nature here. But never before in all my hikes and travels through Kazakhstan have I actually seen a mountain goat here in the wild. And what a scenic place to see it, at the top of these beautiful Kremlin cliffs. Up there you can see it with the naked eye, but with the binoculars you can see it even better, and I hope we can share it with you too. The Ili Alatau National Park and its surrounding areas offers tourists not just ecstasy in nature, but engaging cultural experience as well in the nearby villages. Surrounded by farmland at the foothills of these mountains, we will be visiting the picture-perfect hamlet of Karakumir. He may not be the mayor yet, but one of the most famous young people associated with Karakumir is my friend Arsen, who for years now has been trying to rehabilitate the famous apple orchards of his native village. I can see right away that these trees here are a little bit different. They kind of shoot straighter up. They've got darker leaves.
Yes, the sort is called Star Crimson. The locals call it Americanka. I don't know the history, why it became Americanka.
I guess that these kind of red apples are probably just associated with America. They're very popular with Americans. Yeah. I remember I thought it was really surprising when I saw them for the first time in the bazaar, Americanki.
Yes.
But they're quite popular here as well. But I see now the apples are not quite red yet.
When we in harvesting time in September, it's still a little bit green, but when we put it in storage, after some time it became very pink.
And how's the taste compared to?
Taste is very sweet and with juicy and crispy.
Do you like them yourself?
Yeah,
Are you an apple fan?
I like them. Everybody in my family love apple. For example, my wife, she can eat with me 2 kilograms, so we eat a lot of apple.
Do you bake with apples? Do you make an apple cake or?
We make apple pie, apple chips, and dried apple for juice, for compote.
Okay.
Yeah, and juice, so a lot of different things.
Now I know you have a young daughter. Does she like applesauce?
Yeah, she also loves apple.
She has it in her blood.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this special place, Karakumir.
Yes, the village was founded in 1957, and the first houses was built at that time.
So it's relatively young, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this year it should be 60 years old.
Happy birthday!
Yeah. My grandfather built the first houses, first roads.
When you say that, you mean he did it with his own two hands?
Yes, he and his colleagues.
Crazy.
But he's the last person from that time who is still alive.
And they also started those orchards where we got to visit before.
Yes, orchards and all this farm stuff.
So, I mean, it must feel really special for you to come to a place like this and feel like every street, every tree has some kind of meaning for you.
Yes, for me it's like not only obligation, for me it was a dream to come back here and start work with apples again.
Yeah. Well, I think you're achieving your dreams.
Yeah, I hope so. This is my grandfather's house. I would like to meet him.
It has to be one of the oldest houses here in the village, huh?
Yes.
I can't wait to see.
One of the first houses.
Cool.
This is my grandfather, Rais Razdauletov. He's the oldest person who lives here in the village.
In the entire village?
In the entire village. At the moment, he's 92 years old. He's a respected person in this village.
Well, please tell him thank you for having us over here. Thanks for the hospitality.
Сізге рахмет айтып жатыр. Қарсы алыңызға.
Мен де рахмет сізге деп. I can say thank you as well, but my Kazakh isn't that good.
Grandfather has 10 children, 30 grandchildren, and 30 grand-grandchildren.
So he's a very rich guy.
Yes.
Very blessed guy.
Yeah, he still keeps saying that he's a very rich person. He's rich because he has a lot of children.
Yeah. So Kara, I know from Kazakh means black. And Kimir?
Kimir means soil.
Oh, okay.
Black soil.
Because of the very good soil here,
Yes.
and that's why you can grow so much. So if somebody were to come to a village like Karakumir, if they've had a nice adventure up in the mountains, they want to experience some kind of Kazakh traditions, what kind of things can they see here?
For example, our family, we like to gather together and everybody come in the holiday or in the weekend here in the village in grandfather's house. We make a very big dastarkhan.
Which is what?
Five times bigger than this table. And
that's kind of the table setting.
Yes.
Okay.
Dastarkhan is the table covered with food.
So what is special, I think, about here is that all of this food is local and is natural and is homemade and it's coming from the black earth of Karakumir.
You're right. This is the classical kurdak. We also, with meat, onion and potato, put some pasta. So now we call it the nan-kurdak.
So there's also a classic dish, of course, in Kazakh cuisine with these flat noodles called beshparmak.
Yes.
And then you have kurdak, which is kind of the grilled meat and onions. So this is kind of a fusion between kurdak and beshparmak.
Yeah, right.
I like it.
So now we will drink hot tea from our family samovar.
It's a beautiful kind of antique you have there.
Yes, it's very old, already 59 years.
It's a beautiful object. You know, it's funny when Americans think of Russia or the Soviet Union or Kazakhstan, the samovar is one of the first things that comes to people's minds because it's this kind of symbol of kind of how things used to be. And not a lot of people use samovars anymore.
Yeah, in summertime, during the warm time period season, we use samovar.
Now, something that's different between Kazakhs and Americans is that when it's super hot, like today, you guys drink hot tea. And you say it cools you down, right? You know, growing up in California, in a big city, I often kind of lost touch with nature, with traditional life. And that's what I find invigorating about being here in Almaty is here we can go up into the national park and you have these beautiful mountains and rivers, animals and plants all around. Or you can come into a village like Karakumir and get in touch with these traditions that have been passed down for hundreds of years. So I feel very at home here, very comfortable here. I think anybody who would come to Kazakhstan would find that this is a very special place. So thank you, Arsene, for having us here. Thanks to our viewers for joining us in this special village at this special table setting, this Dasar Khan of ours. Until next time, Sabo, Baka, and goodbye.